Welcome. At Hyde Park tonight, we will talk about the contribution of big mega-scale local companies to the Sri Lankan economy. Going forward, as Sri Lanka aims to achieve hub status in various sectors. Let me warmly welcome to our studios at Hyde Park Mr. Husein Esufally, Chairman of Hemas Holdings.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off talking about Hemas Holdings itself. Before we talk about the good that Hemas has done to the local economy and the kind of results, how your balance sheet was at the end of March 31st, the financial year, Hemas gathered a lot of negative press during the past 1.5 months, specifically after the horrific attacks on the 21st of April. Why is this?
But you know, I think there's lots of misconceptions about who Hemas is, about who we are, what we do, you know, how the way the company is structured. You know, as you know, we are a listed company. We have over 4,000 shareholders, and you know, we have a policy in the company which is very meritocracy based and secular, and we have strong values. So yeah, it's come as a bit of a surprise to us too, but we are getting our story out there, and I'm sure people will, you know, have a better impression once they see that.
Talking about the negative press, you said there were several reasons why all this came about. But has the group itself tried to delve into this to try and understand what really put Hemas in the center of all this?
Well, you know, it's no secret that there is consumers are staying away from companies that they think are Muslim-owned. But you know, the story here is that, you know, as I said before, we are a listed company. We do have shareholders who are, you know, who belong to the, you know, Muslim faith. But this is something that is, you know, it's not very useful in my sense, because you know, although we may have a certain ownership, we have stakeholders that are so diverse. You know, all our employees, actually the majority of our employees happen to be Sinhalese, our suppliers, our business partners, you know, the tax revenues that we generate. So, you know, so these are all disseminated over the economy as a whole. So.
You have 8,100 employees across your group, the holding company, if I'm not mistaken. But Husein, as we talk about this, there is a lot of press about Hemas. Do you discriminate against, yes, you did mention you have, you know, Sinhalese, Buddhists, Muslims, but is there any in the selection process, in your recruitment process?
Absolutely not. We have a very strong principle that we do not bring our faith into the business, and we cannot, because it is a listed company. And this is the way we have done business for 70 years. And if you speak to anybody within Hemas, they will tell you the type of culture that we have within us. We have an Irishman who is our CEO. We have a top management team which, you know, which come from different backgrounds, and sort of we are completely blind to what ethnicity, what color, or even which nationality you belong to. So,
Hemas Holdings, the group net profit rose 47% to 863 million rupees by the end of March. For the financial year ending March 31st. Now, this is a major contribution to the Sri Lankan economy, and of course, this is also homegrown. Local, this is a business that has contributed massively to the local economy. But has your business been hurt in the aftermath of these attacks? Your contribution to the economy, did you have to reduce or cut back on the contribution to the local economy?
No, so I think you said it right. I mean, this is a homegrown business. We have you know, we are providing goods and services to Sri Lankan consumers all over the country. And the reason why we have generated strong results is because consumers love what we produce, what the services that we deliver, the brands that we have. And I think we are extremely proud of that we have been able to grow those revenues, win more consumers, and satisfy them with what we do. Post these attacks, business is down, but then business is down for everybody. I mean, this is not good for anyone. So it's difficult for us to tell how much is because of other factors and how much because it's really because the whole economy as a whole is going through a really rough patch at the moment.
You've been nurturing the business. You've also been contributing at large to the development of Hemas Holdings' contribution to the local economy. You said 70 years now. We're looking at a century of economic participation in 30 years. What is your vision going forward for Sri Lanka as from a business's perspective?
Well, I mean, for Sri Lanka, I think it must be about winning on the world stage. I mean, still we do not generate adequate foreign revenues. We do not get enough foreign direct investment. And this is the only way which we can get out of the sort of debt trap that we seem to be in at the moment. So Sri Lanka's got to win. And we got to do that by, coming together, being united, embracing more high-tech, stuff. We got to do more research and development, and we got to come out with products that are unique and innovative, that really have, some sort of a unique advantage when you're selling out there to the world. Of course, we have a basket of products that we're already doing, but that mix needs to change. We need to move up the ladder. And if you ask me what Hemas would like to be, 30 years hence, 100 years from now, hopefully I'll still be there for that, but I'm not sure. But, we are very firmly anchored in trying to deliver better health, better wellness, better learning opportunities, and to make these all more accessible to Sri Lankans. And actually not only to Sri Lankans, in the various markets in which we operate. We're operating now in Bangladesh, in India, in Nepal, in Myanmar, and we try. This is what we try to do in all of these markets.
Hemas, one of the major areas that your holding company, the group, is present is in the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare industry, as you said. Of course, there are challenges as a country to the industry itself, but in operating your business, what challenges do you see that need to be immediately addressed going forward?
In the healthcare business
and
specifically?
Yes.
Pharmaceuticals specifically? Well, obviously our country, like many other countries, lifestyles are changing. Non-communicable diseases is becoming a bigger thing. I think there's a statistic like 25% of Sri Lankans suffer from some form of diabetes, so we are on a mission to try to play our part in satisfying that. With regard to the pharmaceutical policy, this government, in fact, to give credit to successive administrations, they have followed a policy of trying to make ourselves more self-reliant in pharmaceuticals. And we are supporting that strategy, although we are manufacturing pharmaceuticals right now. We are setting up a brand new facility which will be EU GMP compliant, and not only to service the needs of Sri Lanka, but also to play our part in exporting these products to other markets as well.
Let's talk about this facility. It's quite interesting. We will be this will be located in Sri Lanka, situated, and we will be generating products from Sri Lanka to the export market.
Yeah, that's correct. That's our plan. This is actually adjoining the Slintech facility in Homagama, and we have a partnership with them where they will be doing some research work for us as well. And initially the facility will be catering to the Sri Lankan market and some of the new molecules that we hope to bring in time, but in future, definitely we want to, we want to play more of a role in participating in the export industry. As you know, the pharmaceutical industry is one of the biggest foreign exchange earners for India, and they have really earned competitive advantage on a world scale. And so,
is that what you're looking at, being what is in the pharmaceutical industry in India, doing what India is doing? Is that what you're planning?
It's a bit of a stretch for us to do what India is doing, because they have many companies who are at very big scales. They're participating in the American market, other markets. But yeah, we want to make tiny footsteps in that direction, and hopefully not just us, but hopefully others in the pharmaceutical industry will also, be able to succeed. And I think that could be an industry for the future for Sri Lanka.
Talking about your plant, employment, in terms of employment, what are you looking at, and the contribution to the local economy? What are your estimates?
I don't have exact figures to give you right now, but and it is not a very labor-intensive industry, but it is a very technical industry, and it is an industry where intellectual capital, deep technical knowledge is required, and these are things that as I alluded to before, are very important for Sri Lanka as we go down our journey of being a more advanced economy.
And your recruitment process to the plants will also be.
Why do you even ask? I mean, we will recruit people who are technically capable, and that's exactly what we do. I mean, we always try to recruit the best, because that is the only way that we can compete and win. Not just in Sri Lanka, but over the world. Yeah.
We'll have to take a short commercial break. At Hyde Park, we'll return soon. A warm welcome. At HydePark, we're talking to the chairman of Hemas Holdings. Hemas Holdings is competing with some of the major international brands, conglomerates in Sri Lanka. But let's look at Sri Lanka as a whole going forward. We're talking about hub status for the country going forward. We have short to mid-term objectives as a country, a vision, but really, do we lack that long-term vision that pushes our local companies, our mega companies, and our small and medium enterprises to reach those short to mid-term goals that the country has set up?
Yeah, in a way you're right. I don't think there has been predictability and certainty about what the country's vision is. I don't think we are very clear about which industries we're focusing on, which markets we're focusing on, and what capabilities we need to bring within. So, when you talk about being hub status, or when you talk about, trying to be competitive, you need this clarity, because the government needs to invest in these areas, and the, companies need to invest in these areas. So I think you're right. There is a need certainly for more clarity.
As an industry, have you got together to lobby these your interests for the greater benefit of the country?
Certainly, we are a part of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and I think they have a good debate with the government as it is, and the government also has been trying to come up with a policy which as I said, clarifies which sectors we think Sri Lanka can win in the future. So there is a debate going on, but I think we are some distance away from seeing the fruits of that being realized at the moment.
Doesn't this lack of policy consistency in the country, regardless of what government or administration we have in power, doesn't this really hurt the businesses that are based in Sri Lanka to achieve their maximum potential? Yes, Hemas is doing well, 47% growth in net profits, but can we not do better?
Most certainly. I think the more policy certainty there is, irrespective of which government is in power, I think that would definitely help companies to be more forthcoming with their longer-term investments. I alluded to the pharmaceutical industry, and as I said, this is something which we have seen a consistency in the approach across different regimes. And now you see the benefits of that in terms of investment in new pharmaceutical factories. So yeah, I think having policy certainty across administrations is absolutely vital for us as we go forward.
Let's talk about you as a person who has contributed from your professional perspective about Sri Lanka. Are you happy about where we are heading?
I'm not even sure where we're heading, but no, I think we're not. I think nobody in the business community can really be happy with the progress that Sri Lanka has made. If you look at our growth rates, if you look at the FDI that we've been attracting, if you look at other measures of economic progress, I think we are actually slipping back. And I think that is really a cause for concern. I mean, India is growing at 7%. I said we were doing business in Bangladesh. That economy is growing close on 8%. But Sri Lanka, even before all of this, was at 3 to 4%, I believe.
We missed our growth targets last year, and this year too, Sri Lanka is likely to miss our targets.
Sure.
But given that sentiment, are you also worried about doing new investments in the country, or what is your perspective here?
So the thing is, we've been in Sri Lanka for 70 years. We've been riding the roller coaster, as it were, and we are here to stay. We believe in our motherland, and we are finding avenues for investment. Clearly, it has to be feasible. There has to be some payback, return to the shareholders, all of that. But it's not that we are negative about the country. On the contrary, I think there's so much untapped potential in Sri Lanka. So we still believe in it, and we are doing what we can to invest and to find areas where we can grow.
You're talking about, you're very positive and optimistic about what Sri Lanka offers and what the business community can do. But as a member of the business community, let's also talk about what you really want in terms of changes. Yes, we spoke about policy consistency, but what can we do immediately? Little areas, the regulatory framework. Let's talk about the red tape. Let's talk about impediments to doing business. What can we immediately change? What can we do with the business community coming together, regardless of what governments are in place?
Sure. But let me talk a little bit. Let me answer your question from the perspective of the current issues that we're having. Because I think, first of all, there needs to be law and order. And that is should be the prime duty of any government in place. So I think we must ensure that there is law, order, and harmony in the country. Because without these prerequisites, no business is really going to be very bullish about the future. So we've got to get that right. And I think there are various short-term and long-term measures that have to be done in that regard. And one of the pillars of that, I think, is our education system. The way what we teach our children, how integrated they are, how much they understand each other. And I think there is a great need for reform in the education sector to make sure that we get this right. So I think that's one big area where I think the private sector has been lobbying the government to try and do better. I mean, I spoke before. I'm saying it again, but we need policy consistency, and there are many areas in which this consistency is required. So yeah, that's.
Has it hurt your business operations?
Well, it has. When regulations change, you don't know where you stand. So that's not good. If you take, in the healthcare sector, there has been regulations that have been coming thick and fast, sometimes without adequate consultation with the private sector. So I think, there is obviously room to get that right. And the private sector too must be a partner in that, and must do its own bit in understanding the needs of the society at large, and helping that out. Yeah.
Have you missed any investment opportunity as a result of these challenges businesses are facing in Sri Lanka? Let's talk about your business, the holding company itself, the group. You all do negotiate bringing new investments to the country, but did we lose any of these contacts as a result?
In the light of the present issues?
In the light of the present issues and in the light of all the regulatory barriers that we have?
Well, certainly in the light of the present issues, the tourism industry, as you know, will go through a really rough patch in the next year or so. And there was much investment going into tourism, and I think that...
From your group?
Not so much from our group, but I'm talking from the industry as a whole, and people are going to be concerned about that, and certainly new investment that was coming into this sector, people are going to hold back, I'm sure. And the same applies for the property sector and other sectors as well. So I think although tourism is not a big contributor to the economy, I think 5% or so, there's a huge trickle-down effect of tourism, which goes right down to the common man, to the three-wheel driver, to the person who's building an extra room for their homestays and all of that. So it's a big it's a force multiplier in the country. So hopefully that will come back, and investment in that sector will come up again. But yeah, I think in other sectors too, people are going to be watching and waiting for a while. Certainly we have our foreign investors who are invested in the company, who are trying to figure out what's going on. And I think
what kind of feedback did you have from your foreign investors?
Yeah, so I think when the bomb attacks happened, so I think they have seen this type of thing play out in other countries. So I think they know how to factor that out. It's a more one-off. Okay, stuff happens for a while and then it sort of comes back. But I think what they are unsure about is two things. They are worried about the communal aspect and the fact that it can result in a sort of ongoing cycle of violence. That's obviously not good for anybody. And of course they are trying to figure out the politics, I guess, which we all are in a way. So,
how have you been able to communicate to your foreign investors, especially when we talk about communal violence? This is something that is brought on top of all the problems that Sri Lanka has faced, especially after the Easter attacks, where Sri Lanka was taken by shock. But then this was soon translated into unrest among communities.
Right.
But as a company, as a responsible company, what measures have you taken?
One of the really good things that the Chamber of Commerce did, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce did, is they came up with the Unity Pledge. So and it's all about being united, being Sri Lankan, doing all that. So and we got together, we all read out the pledge at a central location some weeks ago, and I think many big companies have rolled this out across their staff. So, telling staff that, look, we are Sri Lankan, we stand united, we are here for our motherland. And I think, so that's one thing we have said, just to set the tone from the top. And also we are trying to set the tone that, look, we have had a certain set of values in the past. We've been a secular organization. As I said, we've been a meritocratic organization. And we've had values of integrity, humanity, being professional, and that we have to stay firm to those values, because it's easy at times like this to let some of this stuff slip. So
have you actually understood the importance of thinking Sri Lankan, to understanding that we're all Sri Lankan to contribute equally to the country? Yes, you spoke about taking a pledge to set the tone from there, starting there. But do you think this has really, really, really gone into the pulse of the people of our country? So much so we see all this going on. I mean, you've seen the business at several occasions, at several events, at several times of the country's history. But throughout, what has your concern been?
No, frankly, no. I think the answer to your question is no. I don't think we have understood the concept of being Sri Lankan, and I think I really, really believe as a proud Sri Lankan that we must do more of that. In fact, apart from, after the horrific events of Easter Sunday, not only did we have so many deaths, so many families so many people who were injured, so many families just torn apart, I think there was also other impacts of this. I think one of the grievous and the injurious things that was done was for the harmony between the Muslim community and other communities. So that was really dealt a body blow. And I think we have also seen the death of truth, because from some of the stuff that you see going on in social media and even otherwise, is that it's just some of the stories that are going on. And I think people are exploiting the fear, the anxiety, the anger that are there amongst people, and they're exploiting this by spreading all sorts of fake news, divisive sort of stuff. Social media largely, but not only social media. Mm-hmm. So I think we really need to do something about it. Whether it is new laws, I'm not sure, or whether it is just enforcing the laws that we have. I think that's a really important factor that has to be addressed.
What do you feel as a citizen?
I think like all of us, I think this just came out of nowhere, and I felt really, really, I couldn't do anything for a day, 2 days a week. I was just devastated. We took, whatever said and done, we took the last 10 years, we took our freedoms for granted. And the country may not have been doing that great, but there was a personal freedom. We could move around. It was nice to see tourists coming and, places to, move around and do stuff. So I think it just has set us back, isn't it? It's just taken us back to the warriors. And I felt really terrible as a Sri Lankan that this would happen to our country again. And of course, such shock and of course sympathy for all those who were directly and indirectly affected, yeah.
How should we make a comeback here?
So I think that's a great question, because I think out of every event like this, we got to seize on the opportunity. This is the time that we got to say, look, we got to be united. We got to come together. We have more in common than that divides us. And we must come together as proud Sri Lankans first and try to figure out, how we can win, not only in Sri Lanka but on the world stage. Take the case of Rwanda. They had the genocide there, as we all know, between the Tutsis and the Hutus. And if a country like that today can set aside their sort of ethnic backgrounds and be united in the concept of being Rwandan, why can't we do that as Sri Lanka? And I think that it's really, really important that we get that right.
I think on that note, we'll take a short commercial break before we talk more at Hyde Park. Do stay with us. We were talking about your understanding of the local economy and what you feel as a citizen. But let's talk about certain mentions you made about fake news, how Sri Lanka should combat this, counter the circulation of Facebook. Social media, in the last few years, we saw a rapid usage of social media, just as across the world. But Sri Lanka has found it difficult to understand the true meaning of connecting with each other through social media and used it for other purposes. But your group was directly affected, was a victim of social media. But how do you think we need to come about this? Is it legal action, legal measures that we need to take, or is there a certain set of ethical values that we need to instill in our people? From a business's perspective, how would you contribute? Because you have experienced this firsthand.
But maybe we should ask Donald Trump. I think he's probably the man to go to how to combat fake news. But but yeah, but I think it needs a mix of all of that. I think you know, if you take Facebook for instance, I mean the first thing that we do when we see this is we go to Facebook and we complain because these violate certain codes, and you know, 6 or 7 times out of 10 they take it down. But there are some things that they say don't violate their codes, and I must say in the past they've not been very responsive or helpful. But now
Facebook, isn't it?
Yeah, Facebook. But now I think they are taking these things more seriously. And I don't know whether the statistic is right, but I heard from somebody that Facebook had said that this hate speech and this fake news, they see a very high degree of this stuff in Sri Lanka, more than any other country in which they operate. So I think there's a lesson there for us. How do you combat it? I think, again, I'm not sure whether we need new laws or whether we have laws. We have laws like the ICCPR and we have the Penal Code and other stuff. But I think authorities need to act on some of this stuff. Maybe there's not enough.
But as a victim, how of these you know, very social media and fake news and hate speech that we're talking about, was it easy for you to fight back? Was it easy? Did you have that framework to combat what was happening?
Were we prepared? Absolutely not. We didn't know that. You know, we were not prepared at all. So I think this is something that we, not just us, but all companies will have to develop a capability to do so in the future.
So there's no support system either within.
I won't say there's no support system, but it's at a very rudimentary level. So, okay, what have we been doing? We've been complaining to the Facebook, we've been complaining to the authorities, we've been, and one of the things is a lot of the time we see that the accounts that are actually generated some of these contents are, you know, they're all fake accounts. So, you know, these get taken down then by Facebook. So, but it's a difficult thing, you know. Social media it's a very difficult instrument to do. So what we do is we try to tell the right story. We tell a story about who Hemas is, what we stand for, and you know.
But yours is a bigger company. But there are smaller companies that that even go out of business as a result.
That's correct. That's correct. And it's easy today for a competitor. You know, who can't compete with you on the quality of their products or services to have a go at you over social media. And normally, people wouldn't take much heed of this. But in this sort of toxic environment that we have right now, people are buying all these stories. And I think that's not good for anybody. Because what it does is, as I said, you know, I mean, companies like ours, we've been successful because we've been doing something right. We've provided goods and services to people, you know, and they appreciate it. They appreciate the economic value that it brings to them. So when you harm establishments like this, you are harming stakeholders across the value chain and hurting the economy as a whole. So, you know, not a good thing.
Also about fake news and hate speech and all that is going on, is it the lack of education, or is it the lack of social upbringing, or something that is hurting, that is creating all this unnecessary mess within Sri Lanka? For centuries, Sri Lankan people, wherever they come from, they've lived in harmony. They've managed to live together. But at certain junctures in our history, we see all these hate speech, violence instigated through extremist ideologies being planted. What is your understanding?
So let me answer that in 2 parts. I mean, I think the folks doing this are not unsophisticated at all. On the contrary, I think they're very sophisticated. They know how to create content. They know how to manipulate, you know, fake news. They know how to get this stuff going. And in fact, companies like ours have not really been prepared for this. So I think that's something we've got to fix. But the people who are watching this and sharing these stories and believing these stories, I mean, it's really unfortunate. because sometimes it goes to them as if it looks real sometimes, or they just buy the story because they're just clutching at straws. And so yeah, I think people need to check for themselves. Does this make sense? Does this really, does this seem like an authentic source? And obviously it's not just Facebook, it's also the dark social media like WhatsApp and other sort of messaging platforms like that. So
I'd like to move on to speak a little about the bigger picture, Sri Lanka as a whole. We're talking about 2020, a vision for Sri Lanka beyond 2020 or 2025. A first-generation entrepreneur who has competed with the strong international and multinational conglomerates and brand names. How do we see Sri Lanka beyond this? You have been optimistic throughout this discussion about what our potential is, but what we can achieve, realistically speaking, where do you see Sri Lanka?
Well, I think Sri Lanka is a beautiful country. We have a great culture, we have great diversity. So I think I am still a believer in Sri Lanka. I think if we have law and order, if we have peace, if we have unity amongst our people, if you take the long term, Sri Lanka can still be a home for individuals, a home for companies because of our strategic location, and a home for visitors who want to just visit or just even have a second home and stuff like that. So I think there is certainly a future in that direction. But I think, as I've said before, I think Sri Lanka, we have people who are as talented as anybody. And I think there is a future for Sri Lanka in sort of moving up the value chain, in tapping into some of these global markets that we are essentially not competing in, except for very few industries. So yeah, I think there is tremendous potential for Sri Lanka, but we've got to come together, we've got to get our act together.
But is this possible to achieve 2025 hub status, a vision export-oriented as an export hub or maritime hub? Or we talk about a lot of hubs in this, certainly because Sri Lanka is geopolitically important, also regionally, and the location, as we always speak about. The word potential is overused in Sri Lanka. But when we talk about reaching or maximizing on what we already have, can we go there? How would Sri Lanka be? We speak about Singapore looking at Sri Lanka back in the day for development, but where will Sri Lanka be? You've seen businesses develop, economy opening up, but what do we need to do in order to achieve that?
You're quite right. We talk a lot about potential, but how much have we actually delivered? And we alluded to this before in the program that Sri Lanka is actually being slipping back. So if you ask me, I think we need to get, again, I'm coming back to the same thing, but we need to get political stability, and through that we need to get economic certainty and all of that. And then we need to reform. I think we need to change the way we operate. There are so many sacred cows that can't be touched because of political interests and other interests. But I think Sri Lankans really need to be, more progressive, and we really need to look at what's going on in the world, and hopefully through that we can drag our company into the next.
Are you saying that at this rate we're not getting anywhere if we do not address these very areas that you highlighted?
I believe so. I think we will. Sri Lanka is very resilient, and that's a great thing. But if we go at this pace, we'll lose out for sure.
Are these hubs, all these hubs that we're talking about, is it realistically possible? I keep asking you this, but I'd really like to know from the perspective of an entrepreneur who's turned around businesses, who's competed, I repeat, with multinational companies, because this could be the strategy that Sri Lanka employs in going forward.
Yeah, hubs are possible, obviously, because I think we have the right overall dynamics in place for that. But our business, as you know, at least at Hemas, is more about servicing the domestic consumer. And ultimately, these hubs have to benefit the domestic consumer. It's got to benefit Sri Lankans. There's no point in just having hubs for other people to come and take benefit and move away. So we got to balance that in a way that Sri Lankans benefit, and we improve their standard of living. And so I think that's really important too.
We see a lot of interest of regional countries, especially India, China, in some of our strategic enterprises and settings. Is the business community concerned about how the involvement of either India or China or the United States is made possible in Sri Lanka?
So I think there's a lot that the business community is not privy to in this regard. And if you ask me as a Sri Lankan, I don't think it's a great thing to have all these world powers sort of messing around here, because we've seen what happens when that happens. Countries get sort of, they get torn in different directions. So yes, of course, we need to engage with this. These are big countries, they're powerful countries, they're great economies, and of course we need to engage with them and we need to benefit them. But we need to see how we benefit also as a result, and we need to control.
Have you lost control?
I don't believe so. I don't believe we've lost control, no.
Not yet?
Not yet, no, I don't believe so.
Well, I think that's all the time at Hyde Park we have this week, but thank you very much for your time here at our studios. It was indeed an honor to have you at Hyde Park.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting.
We had with us Husein Esufally, the chairman of Hemas Holdings, talking to us about Sri Lanka and the way forward, the contribution of businesses and where Sri Lanka will be in the short to mid-term. Thank you very much for joining us at Hyde Park.